Okay, right. Good evening, everyone. We don't have much of an insight into the background to Rashi, how Rashi came about formulating his Perush al Torah. At the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, there is a little window, a tiny precious window into Rashi, and it's not in Rashi's Perush; it's in the Rashbam. This is a very, very beautiful Rashbam, which I don't know. I certainly, this was new to me. I happened upon it, and I felt like I should share it, just as almost like as an introduction to the shir. And you'll see why this is a little gem. If you have a chumash in front of you with the Rashbam, then you can follow. And if not, it's worth seeing inside. The Rashbam at the beginning of the parsha, on the very first pasuk, the second pasuk actually, Eila Toras Yaakov. So he basically goes through the concept of what we mean when we say ein mikra yotzim midei pshuto. You always look at what is the straightforward, simple pshat. What is the straightforward explanation of the pasuk? That's what we're searching for. He says, even though, of course, we learn everything from the Torah, we learn halachas and din, everything else. But at the end of the day, we are searching first and foremost to understand what we call pshuto shel mikra, the simple explanation. And he says that essentially that. He says the piety of the earlier works, like I think he's mainly seems to be referring to Chazal. They first and foremost focused on the droshes, how we can expound psukim to teach us ideas and halachas, etc., etc. And he brings several examples in the Gemara where you see that focus was less on what we call pshuto shel mikra, the simple explanation of the pasuk, and more on the drush and the medrash and things like that, etc., etc. And he says like this, and then the last few lines are the ones I wanted. This is the gem in the insight to Rashi. But he says, "V'gam Rabbeinu Shlomo Avi Imi." Also, Rabbeinu Shlomo, who's Rashi himself, my mother's father, Meir Einei Gola. So Rashbam was the grandson of Rashi. He refers to him as the Meir Einei Gola, the one who enlightens the eyes of the exiles. Shapirish Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. He explained the whole of Tanakh. Nosan Lev Lefardesh Pshuto Shel Mikra. He focused on explaining what is Pshuto Shel Mikra. Va'afani Shmuel ben Rameh Chasono Zatzal. So he says that myself, Shlomo ben Rameh, Nisvakachti Imoy Olefonov. So he says, I argued in front of him and before him, V'hoidali, and he admitted to me, she'ilu hoya loy panai, had he had time, hoya tzorech la'asos pirushim acherim. He would need to make other commentaries, other pirushim, lefia pashtus, according to the straightforward explanation, hamischadshim b'chol yom, that are renewed every single day. That there's always a new pshuto shel mikra. There's always a new straightforward explanation of the pasuk. And then he goes on to say, basically, he's focusing here on these words. Eila told us Yaakov. These are the generations of Yaakov and Yosef and Shiraz. It's not a whole question why it talks about the generations of Yaakov, and that's his introductory piece to this. But it's just such a beautiful and precious insight, I think, into Rashi. What went into Rashi. He says, I discussed it with him. I had a conversation with him, and he agreed and he admitted to me that actually this idea of searching for what is pshuto shel mikra, what is the straightforward explanation, and what the pasuk really means, just understanding it in that sense. He says there is this idea of a pashtus hamischadshim b'chol yom, the straightforward explanation, which actually it renews itself every day. I just thought that was such a beautiful piece, and it helps us as well understand what our task is to always try and find how the pasuk speaks to us today. That's what we're looking for. That's how I think you can understand that Rashbam. What are we taking from it today, here, now, for us? Every day there's something new for us. So let's look at the power of perspective, which is what we entitled this year. So we'll begin with Reuven. I think there are multiple explanations. There are multiple ways of looking at different aspects of this parsha, where you see how the perspective of the individual shapes the event itself and shapes their reaction to the event. So the central question here, which is asked by Rabbi Aaron Kotler in his Perush Mishnah Rav Aaron, and I'm sure others ask it as well because it's a very, very straightforward question, is why consistently does Reuven have a different approach to the other brothers? What is it about Reuven that he reacts differently? Why? right? So here we have the classic, here, of course, at the beginning of the parsha here, they are Vayisnaklu so lahamiso, they want to kill him, and Reuven is matzil them, saves him from their hands, and he says, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. This is in Pasuk of Aleph, Lamazayf of Aleph, Eshma Reuven, Vayisleim Yodam. He saves them from their hand, and of course, later on as well in Parshas Miketz, where they say, Avol Hashem anachnu. We saw the trouble of our brother, and we didn't do anything, and that's why this has befallen us. Yeah, someone just close that door. Do you mind? Thank you so much. Yeah, Vayan Reuven, and Reuven answers them, and he says to them, he's the one who says, Haloi omarti aleichem leimar. I said to you, Al techatu vayeled. Don't sin against this against the young man. Why did you do this? So he's the one who responds. So says the Rabban Kotler here pulls out a medrash, which is really the key to this. And the medrash says like this. This is a medrash rabbah. Medrash rabbah, it says as follows. On the pasuk of Eshma Reuven Vayatzileu. So the question is, V'heichon hoya. Where was Reuven, asked the medrash? Where was he? The pasuk says before, again, this is pasuk of Aleph. The brothers say, let's go and kill him, we'll throw him into the pits, etc., etc. And we'll just say, wild animal ate him, we'll see what becomes of his dreams. Reuven listens, hears, where was he? Where was Reuven? I think this is the shot we're most familiar with. If I'm not mistaken, this is the one, I think that, does Rashi bring this one? No, I don't know if Rashi does bring it here. He does? Where does Rashi bring that on this pasuk? Somewhere else he brings it, doesn't he? No, but he was the one who was going off to serve his father that day. Yeah. So that's what we're familiar with. Yeah, Rashi does bring that somewhere. I think so. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we're familiar with. That day was Reuven's day, so he was off. Serving his father. That's why he wasn't there. Rabbi Nechemia, a second shot in the medrash is Omar Reuven ani b'char. He says, I'm the firstborn. This is also a familiar shot, right? That there's going to be, I'm going to be blamed because I'm the oldest, right? So I better sort this out. Now, the Rabbanon, the third shot, this is something quite remarkable. Rabbanon Omru, the Rabbanon said, Omar Reuven, Reuven said like this, Hu moina osi imachai. He says, in his dreams, he is counting me together with my brothers. Ve'eni matzila, and I can't save him. Ani hoyisi sover. I thought, this is Reuven's thought, shenidachti, I'm pushed away. Mikoch osam ma'isa. Yeah, what happened? Reuven bilbel yitzui oviv. He moves his father's bed. We know the story. Parshas Vayishlach. I thought I was finished. He said. I thought I'm out of the picture. I'm not part of the brothers anymore. He's counting me with my brothers. There's 11 stars. If there's 11 stars bowing down to Yosef, or one of the 11 is me. And I shouldn't save him. I have to save him. I've got no choice. So Rabbi Aaron Kotler pulls out this such a simple but powerful idea. He says both the brothers and Reuven are observing and listening to the same events. Okay, the brothers, they're hearing the two dreams, right? Yeah, the Almim Alumim and the stars. And the brothers are looking at it and saying, he's out to get us. He's out to get us, right? This is going to cause dissent. He wants to rule over us. He wants to control us. And we know, as Chazal emphasized, they were Mechaven L'Shem Shamayim. They wanted to keep the unity of the Shvatim. We're familiar with that. That was their intent. Their intent was L'Shem Shamayim. But at the same time, their perspective is shaped by their own personal situation, by the situation they're in. So they see the dreams, they see it as a threat. So in that way, they didn't perceive from their own perspective anything missing in their own, if you like, service of Hashem when compared to Yosef. So therefore they immediately assume, well, there's something negative here. We've judged him, we found him guilty, and that's it. And that's it. There's nothing we haven't done. There's nothing missing from us. However, when it comes to Reuven, the dreams didn't have that effect on him. Why? Because he knew that he himself was personally in a pretty bad place. He knew that he done something wrong. He had to do tshuva. Chazal say that he had to do tshuva for what he did. However, we understand exactly what he did, but whatever he did in terms of moving the bed, whatever he did, it was something he had to do tshuva. He was osik the v'taniso. He was fasting. He knew that he had to do tshuva, and therefore he understood and recognized that actually what Yosef's dream represented was a pathway out for him. And that he would ultimately, it was essentially a prophecy, he would ultimately be included amongst the brothers. And the message, therefore, is that the way we react to things in life is so much determined by where we're coming from. It's such a powerful idea. Because Reuven is coming from a position of his own, if you like, instability, therefore, he doesn't see the dream as a threat. He sees it as a bracha. It's a blessing. Wow, look at this opportunity for me. Of course, I have to save him. He's including me in all the shvatim. Whereas the brothers, on the contrary, they're more secure in their own position, and therefore they see it as a threat, as something negative. So this is I think is just a marvelous insight. And this is what Rabbi Kotler takes from it. He says, everything depends on how you evaluate your own situation in life. Once you've worked out yourself, then you can understand, if you reflect on events in life, now I know why I reacted to such and such an event in such a way, if one is honest with oneself. Now that idea, and that's why it's the power of perspective, because they're coming from very different perspectives, is reflected in other areas as well. There's an Emes Yaakov here on Rabbi Yaakov Netsky on Perek Lamed Zayin Posuk Yud Beis. So if we look at Rashi there first. So what does Rashi say? So there's a very unusual Rashi, which I can't be the only one who struggled with this. The brothers went to graze the sheep of their father in Shechem. Says Rashi, Nokud al es. There are dots on the word es. Why did they go? They went to, literally means to graze themselves. That's what it means. Leros es atzmon, right? Now this seems a very difficult thing to understand, right? What does that mean? What does that mean? So, I mean, if you look at the Sifsei Chachomim, the Meforshim and Rashi struggle with this. He asked the question, the Gur Aryeh asked the question, what's it telling us? That they were grazing themselves. So he says, what caused the sin? What caused it? The fact that they were enjoying themselves, eating and drinking, often the cause of many problems. Says the Maharal, this is the way of the world. You get involved with enjoying life, eating and drinking. One thing can lead to another, and you can make incorrect decisions in life. Right? That's what the Maharal says. Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky like this. He says, the brothers understood that, and they saw the picture, and they looked at the situation, and they said that Yosef is running after them. He must be pursuing us. Why? Because he's trying to rule over us. They saw that he was chosen by Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu has uplifted him above all of us, and he's also dreamed these dreams that demonstrate that he is intending to rule over us. They understood that that's it. We're going to be enslaved to him. Now, not only that sense of, if you like, that he was going to rule over them, it actually began earlier because it says Yosef ben Shvayesrei Shana. He was the one who was leading the flock. Even to Sforno, they bring the footnotes here, a Sforno that says he was the leading shepherd. So he was already leading. He was already leading them in that way. But the brothers have now made a decision that actually they're saying, look, we're not prepared to accept this. We're not prepared to accept him controlling and ruling over us. And therefore, they decided to rebel. What was the first thing they do? They went to graze the sheep themselves. We're not interested in him being the chief shepherd. We'll decide. We will graze our own sheep. Doesn't mean to graze themselves. It means to be the shepherds themselves, to rule rule their own decision, make their own decisions as to where to lead the sheep. They went to graze themselves in that sense. They wanted to remove the yoke, the burden of Yosef. And that is why Yaakov says to Yosef, surely your brothers are grazing the sheep in Shechem. What does the word halo mean? It's like someone it's like hello is like a expression of surprise. Hello, surely, right? So Yaakov is saying, oh, I don't understand what's going on. I'm surprised. They've gone off on their own direction. They are grazing without you, the chief. I made you the chief shepherds. They're going off by themselves to be shepherds themselves. And therefore he says, I will send you so that they will understand that they should be subservient to you. But what happens? When Yosef goes to Shechem, he sees they're not there. The whole business of him searching for them, yeah, it's a chai on a chima vakesh. He goes and he meets Nosu, he meets this man, Nosu Mizeli, who's the stranger. All of this was part of the brothers' plan that he should have to find them. Not so simple. They moved away. We're in control here, not you. So that they should show and demonstrate that they were controlling him. And therefore, when they saw Yosef coming from a distance, they were concerned. They thought he must be coming to tell us off. What they see Yosef in the distance, and they say, the shepherd, the chief shepherd has come along to try and bring us back, put us back under his orders. And that's why they say, Hine, behold, Baal hachalomos halozebo, this dreamer is coming. In other words, the dream that he has to rule over us. That's why they tried to kill him. That's why they plot to kill him. By coming to search for them, he's demonstrating to them. And he's trying to rule over them. So this is, if you like, we studied the theme, Pshuto Shel Mikra, the simple explanation of the Psukim. It's very beautiful the way he constructs this. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who's very focused, I think, often on this, is to look at the Psukim as a whole and say, the key is this Rashi, L'Roses Atzmon. What does it mean to graze themselves? So you look at the beginning where it talks about how Yosef is he is the one who's the shepherd. What does that mean? He's the shepherd, the capital S in a way. He's the leading, ruling shepherd. And the whole process of the brothers going off, Yaakov says, I don't know what's going on. They're not under your control anymore. You better go back and bring them back. But because their perspective on him, according to what we said earlier, is to suspect that everything he does is to control. That's what he wants, to put himself above them. He's the Baal HaChalomos, this dreamer, in other words, to rule over us. Therefore, everything is suspicious. And therefore, as soon as he approaches, they say, we've got to deal with this. So whereas Reuven sees Yosef as a unifying force, right? That's what he does based on his own situation in life. The brothers see the same dreams and interpret them as him controlling them and them being subservient to him. Now, the spies. They see what they want to see. Yes, absolutely. You can exactly. You can follow this through the spies. Many different areas, and I'm going to take you one more at the end of the parsha. This is a really fantastic shot, and as I said, it was certainly new to me in understanding the whole episode with the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ophim at the end of the parsha, right? The butler and the baker. This is based on a piece by Limudei Nissan Alpert. Who's a major godly in America, passed away shortly after, I think, Ramosh, in the late 1980s. And he has he looks at this parsha and he asks three basic questions. So we're in Perek, if you find it, Perek Mem, Perek Mem, but it really goes through most of the parsha, but it's a worthwhile journey. He says like this. Question number one. Okay, so we're all familiar with it. Vayachalmu chalom shnehem, posuk. They both dreamed a dream, and they come and they describe their dreams. He says, why was it that the Sarah Mashkin, the butler, sees in his dream the whole process, of the vine? I saw the vine. This is graphic detail, right? I saw the vine, the whole thing, right? And I was squeezing the grapes, the whole process. He said, go straight to the explanation of the dream. It would have been enough. Sheyira gimel kosei, there should 3 cups of wine. Yeah, 3 cups of wine, and that would parallel the 3 baskets of bread. The dream of the baker is much simpler. Yeah, the dream of the baker is you see there, Pasuk in Zion. He says it 3 baskets. Top one was the foods, etc., etc. The birds come and take them. That's it. It's very short. You can have that parallel there. 3 cups of wine, 3 baskets of bread, and both of them, Yosef could explain that the 3 cups are the 3 days, like the 3 baskets are the 3 days. You with me? So what is that whole explanation, that introduction with the squeezing of the grapes? That's his first question. Second question. It says like this. Paro's conduct here is very difficult to understand, because at the end, what does he do right at the end? It says on the 3rd day, it's his birthday, Posach Chof, Vayeshev rosh Sarah Mashkim, and he raises the head of the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ophim, so he, if you like, he appoints them in a sense. He appoints them in a sense, but it then says he returns the Sarah Mashkim on his post, and he continues serving. And the Sarah Ophim, the baker, the officer, the chief of the bakers, what does he do? He hangs him. He hangs them. So the question is, if he's restoring them, right? Noso, that's what it says. He's uplifting them. He's putting them back, but he's not, because he's going to execute one of them, right? Now, Rashi deals with this in a different way. Rashi obviously had this question as well, because Rashi explains Vayeshev means he counted them with the other servants, Moinim Sha'avodov. He counted them all, he listed them all, and he counted these as well, but then he had very different fates for each of them. But it's a difficult pshat, right? It's a difficult explanation. Normally to be Vayeshev Rosh, like Parshas Noso, right, is to uplift. So what does that mean? Yeah. Second, now the third and final question he says is like this. He says, why was the Sarah Mashkim sad? Right? Why was he sad? It says that he was upset. They were both upset, actually. But what was it about this? What was it about his dream that made him upset? At the end of the day, what did he dream? He said, he dreamed the whole thing with the grapes, right? I gave the cup to Paro. What was upset about that? The baker, right? The baker is we can understand why he's upset. And the birds are eating from the basket. So that's not great, right? That's not great. But why is the butler upset? There's nothing he should be. He saw in his dream that he's acting as a faithful servant to Paro. He's pouring the drinks. Everything's good. These are his 3 excellent questions. He explains as follows, based on the Malbim and the Netziv and others. They open the pathway towards his whole explanation. They say like this: the people who had really messed up here with Paro were not these 2 individuals. These 2 individuals were the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ophim. They were in charge, right? One of the underlings had messed up, right, in this way and had done the wrong thing. That's why, and they had been thrown into prison because they were responsible. You go to the top, right? They lost their job because if you end up doing the wrong thing and giving the wrong thing to Paro, then we throw into jail the people who are in charge, not the ones who made the mistake. Now, what's the difference between them? The Sarah Mashkim.
So you sit in the psukim.
That was the.
You look at Pasuk just say it says Mashkim Melech Mitzrayim V'Ofer.
Yes. Chotzu Mashkim Melech Mitzrayim V'Ofer. I think that's probably where they get it from, right? Yeah.
Next Pasuk
it's Sarah Mashkim, and he was angry with the Sarah. Exactly. Yes, I think they talk about that distinction between the fact that only in the second pasuk he mentions the Sarah, the one who's kind of the chief. Exactly. Absolutely. But what he does with that is very clever, because he says like this. He says the Sarah Mashkim understood. And he had internalized what had gone wrong. He realized that what had gone wrong and that he was responsible. But the Sarah Ophim, the baker, did not. And the baker was forever saying, yeah, I should not be here. This was not my fault. Someone else did it. One of the underlings did it. It wasn't me. How does he see that that's the case? Because each one is shown a dream based on their own thought process here. The Sarah Mashkim sees in his dream, that he is not acting correctly. He's not acting. He is someone who has to do everything himself. Now remember, he's the Sarah Mashkim. He's not going to be the one, who has to go and squeeze the grapes and pour them in. That's not his job. That's someone else's job, right? But he sees in his dream going through every stage of the process. That's why he's upset, because it looks like he's been thrown off his position. The dream shows that he's having to do all this stuff, which he spent years rising through the ranks to get someone else to do. And he in the dream is having to do the whole thing himself. What does Yosef say to him? Yosef's interpretation is like this, that you will be able to fix your job, what you've done wrong, because in 3 days' time, Paro will uplift you. He will put the cup in your hand. How are you going to fix what you've done wrong? Paro is going to reappoint you. But it's not going to be the same as before. You are going to have to be the one to pour the drink now. Paro will be biyodcha. The cup will be in your hand. Now, he's going to not put you in a position of authority. He's going to replace you, but as a servant in a position of service. And don't say that this is not worthy, you're not worthy of that role, because that's the way you will correct what you've done wrong. The Sarah Ophim sees in his dream the 3 baskets on his head. The top one is all, and he sees everything that's in the basket. It says in the Pasuk, what does it say in the top basket? Ma'aseh Ofer. It doesn't say that he prepared them. They were Ma'aseh Ofer, baked goods. Someone else did it because he's shown a dream according to what's going through his mind. In the baker's mind, he's the chief, he's the top guy. I don't bake, do me a favor. So I get someone else to bake. I tell them what to do. I carry the basket, Ma'aseh Ofer, but I'm not the one who does the baking. And he put, right? And that's the idea. He says also, Al Rosh on his head. He wants to be the head. He wants to be in charge. That's why he's on top. That's why it's on his head. And that's why the birds eat from the baskets, because he thinks it's beneath him that he should be involved himself with this. Paro then has his birthday, and the kings, that's what they do. They recognize those who have, they give grace and favor to those who have sinned against them. So he lifts them up amongst his servants, and he tests them how they will conduct themselves, whether they will recognize what they've done wrong or not, okay? Whether they will actually now be prepared to accept responsibility and to serve themselves, or they'll just act as they did before. The Sarah Mashkin places Nosan Esakos B'Kaf Paro, that's what it says, okay? Vayitain HaKos Al Kaf Paro, that's the test. Yeah, you understand? He does it. He passes the test because he puts the cup in Paro's hand. He does tshuva. He says, I'm no longer, I'm not going to be the one who thinks I'm in control. I know my place now. It's my responsibility. I'm the one who's going to have to serve the cup. I can't control anyone else. Whereas when it says what does it say about the Sarah Ophim? It just says Sarah Ophim Tola. He just hangs him because he didn't act properly. He hasn't recognized what he's done wrong. The point here is that the difference between, and this answers all three questions. We understand why the Sarah Mashkim sees in his dream all of the, the process of going through the grapes, because that's what he understands, that's what he needs to do now. He's recognized that, that's why he sees that in his dream. We understand why Paro, in a sense, uplifts them, puts them on their positions, because he wants to test them to see whether they are prepared to lower their status now and realize that they have to do the pouring or they have to do the baking. The Sarah Mashkim gets it, not the Sarah Ophim. And then the third question was, why was the Sarah Mashkim sad? Yeah, the Sarah Mashkim is sad because he's realizing he has to be demoted, and that's his only pathway back. But the essence of the message is clear, right? What's the difference between these two individuals? One is prepared to accept responsibility and one isn't. Because the Sarah Mashkim is prepared to accept that responsibility, he's prepared to lead himself and not to say, oh, it was someone else's fault. No, he says it was my fault. I will take responsibility. Yosef, he finishes off with this idea. He says that Yosef, what does Yosef do? Yosef learns from this episode the whole thing is Yosef learns what it means to be a leader in Mitzrayim. The Yosef who shalit al haaretz, we say next week's parsha, or later on the parsha, next week's parsha, he becomes the ruler. He becomes the one. Not that someone else does it. He gives out the grain himself. Hu hamashpir. Okay, and that's why he ends up meeting his brothers. Because he is in that place of giving out the grain, he meets the brothers. Had he not been in that place, had he not been giving out the grain himself, he never would have met them. But he's learned the lesson that the way to serve properly is to take responsibility yourself and not to tell others to do and tell others what to do. Beautiful, beautiful shot. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.
on the idea